Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping right into something pretty big that's unfolding in India's digital space.
Yeah, it's all about how the new Digital Personal Data Protection Act, the DPDP Act from 2023, and the upcoming draft rules for 2025 are tackling legacy consent.
Legacy consent. Okay, so what exactly are we talking about there?
We're talking about all the personal data that organizations, companies collected before these new regulations really came into force.
Right. And the issue is the way they got our okay back then.
Right.
Maybe clicking a simple I agree box,
Yeah,
it might not cut it anymore.
exactly. The new act demands much more. Consent now has to be free, specific, informed, unconditional, unambiguous, and you have to actively do something to show you agree. A clear affirmative action.
Okay, so that old checkbox might not count. So our mission today for you listening is to figure out what can you do about this old data? And what do companies, the ones holding the data, need to do now? We want to cut through the complexity.
Definitely. And just to be crystal clear, legacy consent is that permission you gave before the DPDP Act was fully up and running. If that old consent doesn't meet today's standards, well, it's basically not valid anymore for them to keep using your data based on that alone.
Okay, so let's start with the individual, me, you listening. How can we act on this legacy consent? It feels like the power dynamic is shifting a bit here.
It really is. Section 5, subsection 2 of the Act is pretty central here. It basically invalidates pre-act consent if it doesn't meet the new requirements. So like you said, that quick click from years ago, probably not good enough now.
So what rights does that give me concerning my data that's already out there?
Well, you get several key rights. First up, the right to information. You can go to any organization and ask, hey, what personal data do you have on me? Why are you processing it? And have you shared it?
So I can actually demand that level of detail.
It's fundamental, especially for understanding what's happened with your older data. Then there's the right to correction and erasure.
Correction and erasure, meaning
Meaning if the data they hold about you is wrong, you can demand they fix it. And really importantly for legacy data, if the original reason they collected it isn't valid anymore, or if you just decide to pull your consent, you can ask them to delete it.
so if I signed up for something years ago and don't use it anymore.
Exactly. You could potentially ask them to erase that data. Think about all those old accounts maybe you've forgotten about. This right is pretty significant there.
Sounds it. What else?
You also have the right to grievance redressal. If you feel a company isn't respecting your rights, maybe they're ignoring your request for information or erasure, there are ways to complain and seek resolution.
Okay, so there's recourse if they don't comply.
Yes. And finally, maybe the most powerful one day to day, the right to withdraw consent.
The ability to just say stop.
Precisely. You can withdraw your consent at any time. And crucially, the Act says withdrawing consent must be as easy as giving it was in the first place. This applies even if you initially reconsent for them to use your legacy data. You can always change your mind later.
That's a strong principle. Making withdrawal easy is key. Okay, so that covers what individuals can do. Let's flip it. What about the companies, the data fiduciaries, and especially the big ones, the significant data fiduciaries? What do they have to do about all this legacy data?
Right. This is where it gets operationally quite challenging for them. The Act mandates that they have to re-notify you, the data principal, about the data they hold and why they're processing it.
So they have to reach out proactively.
Yes. And here's the critical part. They must get fresh, compliant consent if they want to keep processing that legacy data. They can't just carry on based on the old permission.
Even if they don't get that fresh consent?
The alternative spelled out is data deletion. They'd have to stop processing and potentially delete the data.
Wow. So no more relying on that vague I agree from 2015. They need a new, clear yes that meets all these stricter rules, free, specific, informed, etc.
Exactly right. And think about the steps involved for them. First, data mapping. They need to figure out what personal data they actually have, where it came from, when it was collected, and under what consent conditions, if any.
That sounds huge, especially for large companies with data scattered everywhere.
It is. Many might not have great records of old consent mechanisms. Just finding the data and understanding its history is a major task. We saw similar challenges in Europe with GDPR, trying to reconcile old systems.
I can imagine. What's the next hurdle after mapping?
Then comes reachability. They need to contact potentially millions of people to ask for this new consent. But contact details change. Emails bounce, phone numbers are disconnected. What if they can't reach you?
Then they can't get consent, and they might have to delete the data.
That's the implication. which could mean losing valuable historical data, information that might feed into their business intelligence or marketing strategies.
So there are real business consequences here, beyond just the compliance headache.
Absolutely. Think about strategies that rely on understanding long-term user behavior or trends. Losing access to that historical data because reconsent wasn't obtained could significantly impact them. It really pushes towards data minimization, only keeping what you absolutely need and have clear current permission for. Plus, non-compliance carries risks of penalties, not just data loss.
Okay, so it's a big deal for companies. Now, we've heard about these consent managers. What role could they play in all this?
Right, consent managers. The idea is they'll be registered entities, sort of like intermediaries, providing platforms for people like you and me to manage our consent.
Like a central dashboard for my data permissions.
That's the concept. A transparent, hopefully user-friendly way to see who has your consent for what, and to easily give or withdraw it across different services without having to log into every single one.
That sounds potentially very helpful. How could they help with this legacy consent problem specifically?
Well, they could really streamline that reconsenting process we were just talking about.
Yeah.
Imagine a consent manager platform where you can see company X holds this old data about you. They want to keep using it for purpose. Why? Do you agree? It could make it much clearer and easier for individuals to give or deny that fresh consent in an organized way.
Yeah, I can see how that would simplify things for everyone involved, individuals and companies. Okay, let's get practical. If you're a company listening to this, feeling maybe a bit overwhelmed by legacy consent, what are the concrete steps? Let's say 3 or 4 key actions.
Okay, based on the Act and what we expect from the rules, here's a practical path.
Lay it out for us.
Step 1, deep dive data audit and mapping. You absolutely have to start here. Know exactly what personal data you hold, where it came from, how you got it, and crucially, what kind of consent, if any, you had originally. Like we said, records might be patchy, but this discovery is non-negotiable.
Know thyself, know thy data. Got it. Step 2.
Step 2, build and roll out new consent mechanisms. Your old ways won't work. Update your privacy policies, your website pop-ups, your app interfaces. They need to be designed to capture consent that is truly free, specific, informed, using clear, simple language that's important, unconditional, unambiguous, and requires that clear yes action from the user. Expect the final rules to give more detail on the simple language part.
Make it easy to understand, not legalese. Okay, step 3.
Step 3, plan and execute the reconsent outreach. Once you know your data and have compliant ways to ask, you need a strategy to contact people, be transparent. Here's the data we have, here's why we want to keep processing it. Do you consent? This is where reachability is tough, and the rules will likely stress using clear, separate notices just for this reconsent purpose.
It's a dedicated effort to get that fresh permission. And the final step.
Step 4, implement robust consent management systems. This isn't a one-off task. You need systems to record consent accurately when it was given, what it covers, and critically, systems to manage and respect withdrawals promptly. This ongoing management is where consent managers might really plug in down the line, providing the infrastructure.
Okay, so audit, redesign, reach out, and manage ongoing. That seems like a solid framework. Are there still gray areas or things we're waiting on clarification for?
Oh, definitely. A key phrase in the Act is that data fiduciaries need to inform people about their legacy data as soon as practicable. What exactly practicable means in terms of a deadline, that's still a bit fuzzy.
Right, how soon is soon?
Exactly.
Yeah.
We expect the final rules will hopefully put some more concrete timelines around that. Also, how the Act and rules are rolled out in phases, the specific timelines, will impact how quickly organizations need to tackle this legacy consent piece.
So the overall direction is clear, but some implementation details are still coming into focus.
Precisely. But the big picture is undeniable. A major shift towards giving individuals more control, ensuring data use, even old data, rests on current, informed agreement.
Okay, let's try and pull this all together. What we've explored in this deep dive is a really fundamental change driven by India's new data protection law. For you, the individual, it means new muscle rights to know, correct, erase, and importantly, withdraw consent for data collected even years ago.
And for companies, the data fiduciaries, it's a significant undertaking. They can't rely on old permissions. They need to actively re-engage, get fresh, compliant consent for legacy data, or delete it. It involves that detailed mapping, redesigning consent flows, outreach, and ongoing management. Consent managers might offer a path to simplifying some of this.
It really forces a move towards more mindful data practices, data minimization, and truly consent-driven processing. So, here's a final thought for you listening. Think about your own digital journey, all the services you've signed up for over the years. What sort of permissions, what legacy consent have you perhaps unknowingly granted along the way? This new landscape gives you a chance to reassess and reshape that. Consider the data you've shared and remember the rights you now have to take back some control. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.